Okay, awesome. We are live and we are recording here on GMA Talk. And this week is video. We have Abdallah Yahya on all the way in Kakuma refugee camp. Welcome to GMA Talk, Abdallah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in Global Mission Advocacy. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. No problem. You're welcome. It's always great, to share stories about refugees and, the benefits they bring to the table and the challenges and how they can be supported accordingly. So I guess we'll just start with introducing yourself, where you're coming from, where you are living, and what you are doing right now.
All right. Thank you. I'm called Abdallah Yahya Ibrahim. Uh, Currently, I'm in Kakuma refugee camp. Originally, I'm from Sudan, West Sudan, Darfur region. Um, I arrived in Kakuma refugee camp in 2007, so I'm almost 14 years in the refugee camp.
Wow.
I'm high school graduate. I have skill in basic skills in computer. I'm community-based trainer and also entrepreneur, having electronic shop that is our GMA studio. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing, and we will talk more in terms of life in a refugee camp, and and then also especially spending a lot of time, like almost 14 years, or about 14 years in the refugee camp. But first of all, you said in terms of your high school graduate and you're working in computers right now. So how is education accessible in the refugee camp, and how did you achieve the education?
Education in the camp mostly is being supported by the NGOs around, supported also by UNHCR and the government, which is basically free sometimes back primary up to high level. Only despite now the current situation in high school, you have to pay. So in my time when I was doing in 2016 high school, so I was not having that much problems maybe to access. But now the current situation for high school, you have to at least cater for something, because not every time UNHCR is catering for it. And I managed also to go to computer studies like 1 year. That what boost me up to be entrepreneur. And apart from that, the work as community-based trainer for the last 5 years that I'm working with Swiss contract, that is Skills for Life project in Kakuma, that help both the refugee and the host community, training them in skills, giving them, empowering the youth to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and have income-generating activities. That is basically what drive me to be here today.
Yeah. Wow, it's very inspiring and very amazing to hear. So then when we talk about the education now being nearly impossible or not easy accessible, especially in some areas when you have to pay. So is that just for high school or even for the vocational trainings, like for the skills training also in the refugee camp? Like, do people also have to pay, or organizations make available the vocational trainings?
Vocational training, most of the NGOs around facilitate and almost for free. But now, if a youth or a person who have done high school and want to go for university, you want to go for college, sometimes it's very difficult. And we are talking about the refugee setup. When I talk of refugee setup, I'm not talking of refugee setup in other countries. We are in Africa, and
Yeah.
in developing countries, you don't have the permission of more 14 years. They come
Wow.
just, we are in 15 kilometers square, and you can't do that access. But you are breathing, you are alive, you have to do something, you have to
Wow.
be creativity and move on with the life, despite the harsh condition, in fact. But most of the vocational trainings around, most of organizations within the camp, supported by the UNHCR with the government of Kenya, they are trying level based to help the youth, especially who have done high school and they cannot afford to go for university. There are scholarships, but they are also very minimum. they have vocational training. Youth are encouraged to do that. But as the organization where I work as community-based trainer, uh, uh, we don't only target high school students, we target everyone who is not employed, so is idle, so that we can give a support, giving support to youth. Uh, it starts with the mobilization, mobilizing the youth who are now, just within the community, or who have just only formal or non-formal education, or who have not even undergone the system of Kenyan curriculum. We give them that opportunity, after identifying them that this is the area that they want to develop in. Example, they talk of maybe they want to do computer surfacing training, or mobile repair training, catering, bakery, mechanic, motorcycle. There are many trades that within, as the Swiss Contact Organization, therefore almost 30 different training as a trade, which equip the youth. So out of that, when the mobilization is done and the youth are registered, then from there now go ahead the training 3 months. After the 3 months, given a toolkit as they start up, it's like encouraging the youth not only to get the knowledge, but also to practice and income, rather than seeking for these job opportunities with the NGOs around, which majority here refugee follow refugee like me is only incentive, it's not a salary. But when they are given that opportunity, they utilize, and I've seen it for the last 5 years, and they are now booming in their business, and they are now changing their in the income, and changing their families. That is how I've seen these trainings. And these trainings are seen as in form of opportunity, because it is an opportunity given. And majority that we have trained for the last 5 years, and Swiss Contact is operating since 2014. And when I talk, there are many youth who are graduated under their technical
Okay.
training, both the refugees and the host community.
So then when you look at the education available and the skills training or the vocational training available, and then when you already speak about just the few kilometers, people have to move around the camp or get used to this life for 14 years or even more, some people. So with these opportunities and limited mobility, what has been like your experience in the refugee camp or day-to-day life in the refugee camp and the challenges in the refugee camp?
Challenges are very many. Let's like me coming from all the way Sudan, when South Sudan and Sudan was one, so I cannot access how far I am. And
Wow.
it is you'll get it more of resilience, and the people are now coping up with the situation, because when we talk about resettlement, it's just minimum. When we talk about integration, that is another policy, and another steps that the government, the host community has to talk of. If there will be acceptance with the host community, will the refugee accept that integration? And what I normally see here, integration involves around just all economic sector. It's not only the social sector. It does not involve the social sector. It's only economic. So the host community around and the refugees coming together in the refugee setup, doing that business is the relationship. But how this relationship can be taken, in the future, is now unknown destiny. Because for me, I don't know, after 14 years, how long should I live? Will the
Wow.
government of Kenya integrate me in this, with the host community? Is another challenge. It's not one step that I will be talking. There are many procedures, involves many policies, many laws has to be passed. But hoping if refugees can be given more opportunities, apart from these vocational trainings, is, technical trainings and the other, even the curriculum itself. But if they are supported, those who are doing, universities, even if they are very minimum, if they are given every time, it will be helpful. And one of the durable solution also, see, going back home is also a solution. But when we look at the context where you are coming from, it's still there is a war, still there is problem, still there is a challenge. What is the solution? It's still, this reflect back to the refugee what he can do. That's why when a refugee given just a single opportunity, they don't misuse, because they have learned over the years that or
Mm-hmm.
they are of more resilience, being patient and coping up with every change that they are seeing, because they, whatever they see, they witness with their eyes, and it is not the story that being told. And
Yeah.
others who are lucky and got, who are being resettled to the other countries, we see them also. They are leadings with the with the non-humanitarians. NGOs, that is non-governmental organizations. And also they are excelling in their own activities in terms of prosperity, and integrating where they are being also resettled. So it's like, if there will be more opportunities with understanding, with more policies that are favoring both the host country and the refugees can excel more, and the local community can benefit, then others also can benefit,
Yeah.
because we are talking of now change, and the change has
Mhm.
to start with
Yeah.
one person.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much for sharing about that. Then when you talk about one of the solution being integration, and you already speak about the support that the Kenyan government also gives to the refugee, but also the Kenyan government also has been in the news of wanting to close the Kakuma refugee camp and the Dab refugee camp. So how
Yeah.
is integration possible when you are having maybe some authority once in a while saying, okay, refugees have to go back? And I cannot imagine like maybe almost 500,000 refugees like going back, as you talk about the challenges, which refugee face, especially with the two refugee camp, being very huge. So how more can the government like support, or how more can the government work with the NGO and intergovernmental organization to ensure that the integration and the skills and the benefits socio-economic of refugees is well utilized in the country?
All right. So far, what I know and what I heard, sometimes back, is that the UNHCR, together with the government of Kenya, they had a plan to integrate, but up to now, in the camp where I live, I've never seen people being integrated.
Wow.
But the point why I'm saying of integration, we are in a refugee setup, but we also see what is happening, in the news, and Kenya also is going to close, the two refugee, the biggest refugee camp. And it will be a big challenge, especially you know uh, where to go, because where you are come from is still a challenges that has not been addressed, and you are not also taking part as a refugee. You are all a refugee, you are seen as a refugee, but you are not you are not the initiative of solving your own problems back home. So
Mm,
it's only you are in the camp and you are being blocked. But
mm,
what I was also inspired and seen in the other part of the world, refugee set up in the other part, they were not held in the reception centers or refugee centers for so long. And despite their challenges, they are given that opportunity to excel. And it is very different from the scenario where we are. So if there will be a considerations that and an opportunity given, if the government can allow integration, or
mm,
maybe for people being held here for so long, and given other opportunities for the resettlement, it will be more helpful. And also integrating or hearing the voice of the refugees to be their own solution to where we come from, respective from the
yeah.
Sudan, Congo, Somalia, Burundi,
Mhm.
Rwanda, Ethiopia. It will be more perfect that taking the initiative, the refugees, because the refugee know what they are suffering, and they know
Mhm.
what is right, because for so long being forgotten. And when they see
Yeah.
the media, and the media only talk refugees,
Yeah.
what they see is only food, shelter, clothes.
Mhm.
They don't see other things, that
Yeah, and that's the thing.
creativity, talent.
Yeah.
They are also aiming to change. They want to be like any other person. Freedom of expression, freedom of movement. When
Yeah.
I talk 14 years, I don't have that freedom of movement. And if I have to go beyond the control of the refugee sector,
Mhm.
I have to go to ask for work. Movement permit. And despite the Kenya does not give also work permit, so which means that it's also job opportunity, employment is also
Mhm.
another problem, which means that we have families to feed, we have
Yeah.
uh, to take care, things to take care of. But despite the challenges, we are hoping, if if communities outside, or even the refugee sector, the NGOs, the governments, from different agencies came to support these refugees, I see, there will be a more hope, I mean, helpful to the refugees, in excelling their life,
Mm-hmm.
and they also
Yeah.
integrating and being part of the solution to many
Mm-hmm.
other things.
Yeah, for sure, I agree, and I couldn't agree more. Then when you talk about now with the situations of the media or some governments around the world or people, viewing refugees, sometimes just as receiving handout or receiving support, and at times, as troublemakers or people of no good. But the other part, which you and I agree most on is the benefits, whether it's socially, economically, or even politically in the country. So can you talk a little bit about like the social economic benefits, which is missed when it comes
Okay.
to talk about refugees and how that can be utilized?
Okay, let me talk now the perspective of Kakuma refugee camp, where I've now been for the last 14 years. When we see the Kakuma refugee camp is in the far northeast, is bordering three countries, that is Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda.
Mm,
And when we see how this, the setup look like, you know, only even when you get the host community living around the camp, also they have their own demands with the government because they're also being left for so long.
mm,
Imagine as a refugee simple like me, you know, having that opportunity or support. And while the local residents, they don't have that support because, and when you compare, because it is, pressing issue. And sometimes they perceive, you are coming to take over our job, you are coming to
mm,
take, over the resources, the government and all agencies are tackling the refugees while they are leaving the host community around. So there will be a problem, you know, when we perceive. And to understand it, we have to see that holistic understanding, that is a 360-degree, what the local person or the host community, demand, and what the refugee demand, and what is the government is doing to end up, to solve the problem. So if we can't see the host or the residents of the area around, their views, their opinion, and we don't value them, then it will be a challenge. And in the other hand, a refugee who need of protection at the same time, also looking for decent life, there are needs that he is looking at because of vulnerability and all the condition that he is living around. That's why we see a lot of social problems are emerging, and that's why this refugee setup, you'll get economic in small scales are booming up, not because people are interested to do business and take over, or look for the jobs around and take over these opportunities, but they were held in the refugees for so long, and they come to understand that no, despite my problems that I'm living, I have to do something to cater for my own life, my own needs, despite getting the support from the UNHCR. In the other hand, the host community or the residents of the country, we think that we see the refugee are better in terms of living standard, and they are big much support. They perceive in negativity, and that is most of the time it brings more of confusion. So in every refugee setup, despite it being, when we see refugee setup that have stayed for so long, like Kakuma being for the last 3 decades,
mm,
when you see people are just interacting with the host community just within the short distance that we are, in
mm,
terms of business relationships, coming into these small sectors and exchange of these goods and commodities that are available, and at the same time, as the refugee person also trying to think and evaluate, what can I do to improve my life despite being vulnerable at this situation. So it is matter of logic understanding that refugee has problems. I don't know about the other countries where they have hosted the refugees, and at the same time, the host community where we live around is also the same. They are looking for good education, they are good health facilities, and all these. So it will be more of challenging, and it needs of more of understanding
Mm.
rather than paperwork, and rather than
Mhm.
all this.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate. Thank you very much, yeah, for sharing in terms of your story and the challenges and the solutions and the benefits, in Kakuma refugee camp, and just painting a light on the refugee situations in general. So, is there any something that I forgot to ask you, or something that you would like to talk about in terms of whether it's your situations, the situations, or even what is happening in the country or in the Kakuma refugee camp?
I think if refugees are given opportunity, and they are not being neglected, or they are not being biased, they can play a good role in terms of contributing to where they are, or and contributing to the countries where they come from. Uh, but what is more need to be focused is, we have to understand that refugee set up very well. We
Mm,
have to understand that where they are host, there are policies, there are restrictions, despite they are being protected by UNHCR's policies, but there are more sanctions and policies that are imposed by the host countries. And they are not, refugees are not there to grab resources or take up these jobs on all this, but because of the challenges and because of the situation where they are, that's why they are only seeking for protection. But when these take long, we tend to be more resilient and adapt our situations around. So
mm,
with more opportunities in terms of helping them, if it is high educations, or if it is skills that they want to invent in, so it will be inspiring, and more helpful to them, to their families, and create a room of understanding.
mm. Yeah, okay, awesome. Thank you very much, Abdallah Yahya, for really sharing on GMA Talk. Really appreciate. And, really continuously wishing you the very best with you and refugees in the Kakuma refugee camp, and just refugees around the world, for people really, to see the benefits of refugees and really help and support them. And to our viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel right here on GMA Talk. Until next time.